Thanks for tuning in to Twang and Bang. To kill a deer, what you're doing is robbing its brain of oxygen until the brain stops functioning. And the way you do that with a broadhead is by puncturing the lungs and causing massive bleeding. It's only natural to imagine that the more cutting that you do with the broadhead, the faster you're going to rob the brain of oxygen, the faster the deer's going to die, and the less tracking you're going to do. When you use a fixed blade broadhead like this Ramcat, you're getting about 2¼ inches of total cutting. Some expandables give you up to 3 inches of cutting like this 2-inch hammerhead expandable does. But you run into limitations of arrow flight by just growing either a fixed blade head or an expandable blade head in larger and larger diameter. Well, a company called Flying Arrow Archery has managed to fit 5 inches of cutting in a 7/8 inch diameter broadhead. They call it the Toxic, and it just has this amazing look to it. When I first saw it, I thought, I've got to get this thing in for testing, and I wasn't sure whether this was going to be a gimmick or not, but that's what we're going to find out next on Twang and Bang. The Toxic is a 100 grain broadhead made with 3 pairs of curved blades. The blades are beveled only on the inner surface, and they're flexible so that they open up as they're passing through tissue. The blades are replaceable, and they're locked onto the ferrule with a screw-on tip. The first thing that I notice is that the blades aren't actually that sharp. Their shape also makes it very difficult to find a way to make them sharper on your own. I think that's a major drawback to the interior bevel and the curved shape of these blades. That said, I suspect that their shape also works to their advantage because with the blades curving around on themselves, blood vessels are going to get pulled into the cutting path of the blades and not pushed out of the way. First up is a flight test. Though these arrows are impacting about 4 inches from where my field points would hit on this target, that's a pretty good group, at least by hunting standards. In fact, I stacked the arrow 3 more times in that little group when the cameras weren't rolling. I'm very happy with the flight of this broadhead because I can adjust my sights to compensate for the change in the point of impact. That group is going to kill deer, no doubt. Next up is the Plywood Test. This is a 1/2 inch plywood board, and that broadhead had no problems cutting its way through the wood. You can see here how the blades still cut their cloverleaf pattern through the target after passing through the plywood. The blades did exactly as they're designed to do, and they opened up when passing through the plywood. They were still able to make these cores out of the target, showing that they were both sharp enough and straight enough to do the cutting that they needed to do. This last test is through hide into ballistics gel. Though at first glance that looks like it's not a lot of penetration, ballistics gel grabs onto the shafts of arrows, so you don't typically see the kind of penetration in gel that you actually see in game animals. Of course, the blades had no problem cutting their cloverleaf into the hide, but what's most striking to me is that the blades passed in a straight line through the gel block. There was no rotation of this broadhead whatsoever. The hide looks exactly like the cutout on the package. It looks just like a 3-leaf clover 7/8 inch across. And this same shape continues all the way through the gel to where the broadhead came to rest. Total penetration was about 1 foot, though it doesn't have the same meaning with an arrow as it does with a bullet. Here's what's so amazing though. When I open up the wound channel, you can see the meat worms that the manufacturer talks about. I've never seen this kind of wound channel before. Though it may be less than 1 inch across, it is devastating. I have a hard time imagining a path that a blood vessel could take through this and not get cut somewhere. This broadhead clearly did its job. So it'll fly and group at 400 feet per second. It'll punch through plywood without any serious damage to the blades. And of course, it makes these meat worms when it goes through gel and certainly through tissue. I think that this broadhead meets its claims made by the manufacturer in this controlled testing. And being the first year that this is available for hunting, we're starting to see the first reports of its use on game, and it seems that as long as you get good shot placement, you're going to get a very fast kill. That's a 7/8 inch cutting diameter, so you're not going to necessarily get the same margin for error that a 2-inch broadhead would give you. But I feel comfortable enough about what I've seen and what I've read about its performance in game that this is the broadhead I'm going to be using for my next archery hunt. If you want to learn more about the Toxic broadhead, be sure to click the link in the video description below. If you like this video, please take the time to log in and click the like button or the plus button on Google+. It'll really help me out. And be sure to click right here to subscribe so you can catch my next videos on bows, guns, and other cool stuff. I really appreciate you watching Twang-A-Bang, and I hope to see you next time.